Hey, it's Stu, and this is going to be a review video. I have a stack of books here that is pretty substantial because I did a lot of reading at the beginning of the year. So I've already done a review video from sunny San Diego from books that I read only the physical copies of while sitting out in the sunshine. And then here's a list of books that I've read: hybrid, immersive, audio, digital, physical, mix, or some. Just audio. I think only one here. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, the first book that I read was Michael Chabon's The Final Solution. Somebody said this name recently and they said it Chabon. So, Michael, if I'm pronouncing Chabon or Chabon wrong, please excuse me. This is my second book by this author, and this is after he won the Pulitzer for The Adventures anyway. I have it right up here. Yeah. The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier Clay. I always say Cassius. Can't help myself. Anyway, in this book, it's like an homage to Arthur Conan Doyle and the Sherlock Holmes series. There's like a gumshoe detective situation. There's a bird who there's some mystery around this bird because this bird is stating numbers and they don't know what the numbers are for. And this is taking place during, let me see, I think it's like either pre or post World War II, right? Right in that time. So there's a German spy. I'm conflating because I read two World War books at the same time, which was, which was The Welsh Girl as well. Anyway, there's a parrot, and I think that the parrot leaves the mystery and intrigue that's spouting some numbers. And then there's there's an elderly man and then a young boy who has this parrot. And there's some great illustrations in this book that I really appreciated, and I found this book to be just an absolute romp and a joy to read, and recommend it to literary fiction readers who want to just foray a little into genre reading. There's a great, in the digital book, there was the transcript for his NPR interview with Stephen Inskeep. That I really liked as well, when he talked about genre writing and sort of problematized the highbrowism of literary fiction. People who think themselves superior readers as literary fiction readers or writers, etc. Anyway, great little book. Next, The Ministry of Time by Kayleen Bradley. This book very much read what the author's note said it was. So this just started as a small idea that she was writing for a friend, and then went through a lot of drafts and kind of became this book. And I believe because it is a Good Morning America book, much more of a sensation, I think, than this author had anticipated. It is witty and funny, and it is a romp. It was a little too cliche and somewhat disappointing in some ways. But I tried to just let it be what it was, which was this author with this idea. And that sort of got worked and reworked until it became this book. And I felt some of that reworking. I also felt some of just some things that just didn't work for me in this story. But we're following time travelers, people that are brought from another era into a current era, and there's a time traveling device in this, and then there's people who help them get used to the modern era that the time travelers from the past have been brought into. And the folks that are helping, that's what the protagonist is. She's I can't remember what they're called, a bridge. Yeah, makes sense, right? She's the bridge for a particular character who was a sailor in an Arctic expedition. So Kayleen Bradley did a lot of like research about this character who she fictionalized, but who is based on a person that is a real life person who was part of an Arctic expedition that got trapped in the ice and didn't survive. In any case, I didn't find the romance pieces in this all that compelling, but I can see why they're done. I mean, this is like commercially viable literature that was a romp. That's what I can say. And if you like, it's speculative. Obviously, it's about time travel, and there's some witticisms about like what it might be like to try to adapt to modernity attitudes and ideas if you just catapulted out of the past into modern times. The next book, I listened to my brilliant friend. Yeah, the next book I read was Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey, and I know this is a much beloved book. The person who I got this at the Friends of the Library, the Multnomah Library in Portland, Oregon, and that volunteer said, she'd heard from some of her friends that this is the best book of the year. I know that sometimes I enter with already bias. If I think a book's been super hyped, I'm already biased that I probably won't like it. So I was trying to be conscious of that, and I did like the building of the atmosphere, and I understand this is really atmospheric and in some of the same ways that that I appreciate out of other books that I've read recently. For example, I can't really say what didn't work for me in this book without spoiling, so I won't. But the premise of the book, if you don't already know, is that there are folks on this island close to Antarctica that are running a seed bank where all of the seeds in the world are stored. And because of global warming, this island will soon be under the sea, and they can't sustain this seed bank there. And so they have to make decisions about which seeds of all of like that have been collected of all of the flora of Earth should be saved and taken to mainland Australia, or which should be let drown, basically. So that's a premise. There's a family living there. There is a father and his 3 children, and no mother because she died in childbirth with the youngest. And then a woman washes up on shore, and then thus ensues like a slow uncovering of mystery. I can understand why people liked it. I thought I sometimes I think like the unraveling of mystery is just preposterous in books, and this is one of those books. I found it. I couldn't suspend my disbelief in a couple of places, and then I just found it a bit ridiculous. And again, I can't say why or how without spoiling it, so I won't. But it is a much beloved book, and so I can see, why, it's been well read. And so I'm not saying don't read it. I'm just saying it didn't work for me. And it actually hasn't worked for a couple other people who I trust as well. I listened to, and I'm really glad that I listened to, but it was immersive. I did an immersive of Elena Ferrante's My Brilliant Friend, and I'm planning on reading this whole quartet, 1 book per month. So starting in January, I read My Brilliant Friend, and then I'll read book 2 of the Neapolitan series next month in February. This was absolutely, and I'm not saying anything that anybody who knows about this book doesn't already know, a character study. And I think Elena Ferrante just does that character study with absolute expertise. And sometimes I get a little lost. I don't really care about the drama bits of it, but certainly the deep character study of girls coming of age and friendship, and how females are positioned in society, and what's their point of view of some constructs of Naples that we've heard of before in popular works, but it's a very masculine point of view. And so this is giving us a very feminine and female point of view through this deep character study of the protagonist and her relationship with her friend. And I think it's absolutely, it was New York Times one best book of the 100 best books of this century, since we're 25 years into it so far. It was the #1 book, and I can see why. I think that it scratches all of the itches for readers. And I think that it could be loved by literary fiction readers as well as just genre readers. And it is really like appealing to popularity or wide audiences, but without being cringy, cliche, predictable, etc., as these two books were a little bit for me. Okay. Blood-Drenched Beard by Daniel Galera, translated from the Portuguese. Not by him, although he is a translator. The translator of this book is Alison Andriken. I found this to be a reasonable story. I found it to be putrescent in its toxic masculinity. I didn't understand why, for instance, there needed to be a scene at a brothel. It didn't build any of the mystique of the book, and if it was written so that the main character could show up like a stand-up guy because he didn't want to pay the same for a cheap wine as for the sex worker that he was going to participate in exploitation of, then I'm even more disappointed, because I don't think that makes the main character a stand-up guy. There are other parts of this book and storytelling that I liked. I think I might have felt differently about it if I were reading it in Portuguese. And I have no tolerance for those ways that males tell stories anymore. I don't find them intriguing, interesting, insightful. And in fact, having lived and reading the experiences of that kind of a cultural setup through the eyes of women, it doesn't do anything more than just either really annoy or really disappoint me. So I was able to get some things out of this book. In this book, we're following a man who goes to a smaller town in the southern part, a coastal village in the southern part of Brazil, because he's trying to figure out what happened to his grandfather. And his grandfather allegedly was murdered in this town, but it was done as like local justice, community justice. And he's trying to get to the bottom of what happened. He drinks a lot. He has sex with women. He is taking care of his late father's dog, which I think is also trying to like build some kind of like, I don't know, likability or integrity of this character. And that's it. It's his misadventures trying to find out what happened to his granddad. The Wedding People by Alison Isbach. Okay, I want to actually sidebar for a second. So when I got done with Blood-Drenched Beard, I was about to take my flight to San Diego, and I just needed I need that like feminine rage horror book or Wild Girl, or I need recovery books when I experience what I just explained, what happened with me with Blood-Drenched Beard. So I pulled out Hexus, and Hexus is philosophical, feminine rage horror at its finest. And although it's a small book, do not be fooled. You won't be able to read this book likely in a setting. It is impactful and it is extremely intense. So I said, okay, I need my palate cleanser from, you know, the bullshit patriarchal worldview that is still being pushed into storytelling as if it's interesting. So I grabbed this, but here's what's up. I started reading this while I was at the airport, and I in no way could engage with this while being surrounded by, you know, hundreds of strangers. It was not the right pick for an airport read for me at all. I'll come back to this because I did finish it, but I made a quick switch then to like what would be the quintessential airport read, I think, which is The Wedding People by Alison Espach. This is a surprisingly, it surprised me a little. And what surprised me about it was it's a retelling of Mrs. Dalloway. And I've read Mrs. Dalloway about a year ago. I think it was about this time in 1925, Mrs. Dalloway was, by Virginia Woolf, was published. So I did a listen. I listened to it on an audiobook to celebrate the anniversary. And I have so much respect for Virginia Woolf, as did this author. And I think there are some ways, I mean, she very explicitly says, the protagonist is reading Mrs. Dalloway in this book, okay? And she drops Virginia Woolf and Mrs. Dalloway plenty of times, so it's not implied at all. And in fact, someone could very much criticize that, who's your reader? Who's your audience? The answer is this is an extremely commercially viable retelling. And in some ways, I really respect and like that. I think people who hadn't or had tried Mrs. Dalloway and felt maybe threatened by it or didn't quite get the stream of consciousness or think of Mrs. Dalloway as like that book that you were made to read in lit class, might actually find a new way to engage with that piece of literature after having read this book. Like, I fret. Okay, so there's someone in Mrs. Dalloway doesn't persist and ends by their own doing, as does Virginia Woolf herself, right? The actual story of Virginia Woolf. And so, you know, sort of the trigger warning from the beginning is that the protagonist in this book has ideation. And, you know, she shows up at this resort to end it all. And then, you know, thus ensues this story where she meets the wedding people and the bride who is stupidly rich and just throws a whole bunch of money at her to have all of these experiences. And I've always problematized that kind of like, oh yeah, sure, I feel kind of bummed about my life. But if you throw a bunch of money at me and give me a love interest, then all of a sudden, I don't feel that way. And I think there are some really problematic line of reasoning and themes in that. And I think if I were a mental health professional, which I'm not, I wonder what I'd love to be in a book club with mental health professionals and who deal with ideation, of folks who suffer, like probably what Virginia Woolf did, from chronic depression, which is not situational, would say about a work like this. I can't say the things that I really want to vomit all over without spoiling the book, so I won't, but I didn't appreciate the ending and or where the book went with it. But that being said, again, that's because it's just not my jam, and I can see how people would. So if you want, if you know Virginia Woolf and Mrs. Dalloway, you should read this and see if you like the retelling. And if you are someone, like I mentioned before, that read it and was like, I don't know, I had to read it in high school, I couldn't really engage with it, read this and then see if you could give Mrs. Dalloway a chance again. And if not, this is what it was, an airport read. And I think that most people that have read it, I didn't look, but I know this was another super hyped and popular book. And I believe it's from last year, from 2025. So I'm really hitting some kind of newer releases up in here. So, oh, it's 2024. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, I mean, if you're into sort of like fast, popular reads that have a little bit of substance, and again, a retelling, then this would be the book for you. So that was what I read and what I listened to. So, you know, once the plane's going over 7, if I start to get motion sick, I listen. And then I took public transportation around in San Diego, and I took walks. So I was listening. I was listening to some short stories, just didn't work for me. I couldn't stay engaged. So then I started listening to Matt Haig's The Midnight Library. Interesting enough, where this is an homage to Virginia Woolf, this is an homage to Sylvia Plath. And if you know anything about your classic, the canon, the female canon, you know how the end of both Sylvia Plath and Virginia Woolf. And so if you're experiencing books that are homage to those two women, you can be forewarned about the trigger warning of this. These are people who are struggling with the ideation to end their life. I found this book cozy, and because I decided to embrace it as a cozy, it didn't really annoy me. However, it didn't intrigue me in any way either. I didn't find this a particularly profound work of anything other than a cozy. And in some ways it felt a bit didactic in that sort of moralistic way, like a middle grade. Like, I feel like this is a good middle grade story. And if it would have been sort of aimed more towards a middle grade, maybe I could have embraced it more. That being said, without being super intriguing or insightful in any way that was really like notable, it's a cozy. And every once in a while we need to read a cozy, and it does have uplifting messages somewhat. So I think that there are some places where someone, like some parts of this book, someone could reflect, give opportunity to some folks. Again, it felt quite juvenile, but that doesn't mean to say that folks don't go through things, and this didn't give them the opportunity to reflect on something. Again, I wonder what mental health professionals would say about like the messages this is saying about someone who is really suffering from a desire to not be alive, and then what it takes to heal from or overcome that desire. Yeah, I problematize some of the messaging in there. Although, again, it is a cozy, and there you have it. So, Hexus was not cozy in any way at all. There was nothing cozy about this book. It was so confronting. It was so brutal. There were so many moments when this woman, her homicidal rage, I was like, you're unhinged. You are unhinged protagonist. You are rambling, yet why are you making sense? Especially when approaching it as a philosophical work, which it is. If you read the author's note, she is a PhD in philosophy, and man, can you get stuck in mental loops. And also just some of this book is absolutely just gruesome and horrifying. It calls out so many normalized parts of patriarchal misogyny that, and it frames it in a way that you feel it's an outlet for the fury and the frustration that all of us who try to combat that worldview and survive and thrive in spite of it, it's an outlet for us, for sure. The author of this, by the way, is Charlene Elbsby, and this publishing house is Clash, and I think it's a small one that I believe their statement is they put the lit in literary. Know what you're getting into, okay? And if this kind of a book, like Bunny, like, yeah, you know who you are if you're the audience for this kind of book. And if you're that person, absolutely read it. I can't stop thinking about it. And after that, I actually needed just like a simple palate cleanser. So I went middle grade. Like, I needed that to get over Blood Drenched Beard. And then I needed just give me something like the Guncle. Okay, well, so I chose Brightstorm, and I had actually been trying to read Brightstorm for quite some time and then not getting to it. It's a middle grade book. It's about two twins, and they're adventuring into it's a world, but it's not this world, but it's the Arctic in the world, and they're taking this skyship and they're solving problems, and it's a hero's journey for sure. It's a hero's journey of these two twins as they set out to find what happened to their father. Similar premise to Blood Drenched Beard, but this one has all. I mean, it's middle grade gets to be, in my opinion, a little bit more cliche, a little bit more tropey, a little bit more gimmicky. Because, like, for instance, the Ministry of Time was really gimmicky, and for some reason, like that should be intriguing for middle grade readers who are the target audience. And I can just enjoy it for what it is inside of middle grade. This is by Vashti Hardy, and I think it's book one of a series. I don't anticipate continuing the series, but I'm really glad I read it. It has some fantastic illustrations as well, which, you know, I do love my illustrations. They really add to the reading experience. And I got this book from a Little Free Library, and I noted in it because it has a little sticker that says, "Read, Love, Share, Return." I don't get the premise of that people want you to return books to their Little Free Library. But I have heard people say it, and obviously I read, I was at Little Free Libraries today, and somebody had a sign that said, if you feel like it, bring the book back here. Okay. I get that, but I also I think how most people use Little Free Libraries, because man, do I watch those videos, is that they read a book and then they return it to another Little Free Library. If you are taking from just the Little Free Library on your block or in your neighborhood, I can see that working, but many, if not most of us, explore Little Free Libraries around everywhere, and we leave our books, and we're happy to leave them in other neighborhoods to get good books circulating, not just in the neighborhood where we live. And also when we travel, like, for instance, I just have traveled twice in 2 different states within the last month, and I've distributed books in Little Free Libraries and took books from Little Free Libraries in those other states where I won't return for some time. I said all that to say, I'm going to put this back in its original Little Free Library. I made a note in it. I think I will make another video because the 52 book club, I am doing it, and it is kind of informing it's kind of informing what I'm reading. And so I think every one of these books that I've read fit a prompt. And so I think what I'll do, I have like a huge spreadsheet where I'm like, here's all of the possibilities and here's what I'm reading. And I think what I'll do is just make a 52 book club video, and I'll just say the book and what prompt it fit or could fit, because I may or may not use it for that prompt depending on where my reading goes. This is only January for the whole year, but leaving it as a possibility. So before I put these books into the unhaul bag and take them and distribute them, I'm going to make that video maybe tomorrow. Yeah. I also have a haul video. I know haul videos, but I did go to Little Free Libraries today, and from books that I had read I had a lot of books to get rid of. So I did that. And I hauled some some books, there were some really good finds today, to be honest. So I want to do a video about that. And then I don't know about a TBR, but you should, like, I feel like I do need to talk about it because I have so many books queued up and I don't feel stressed about it at all. I just want so many books kind of queued up so that I can mood read like I have been. So really the only kind of, I started some series that I want to continue reading in February, and that's kind of guiding my reading and the 52 book club. But other than that, I don't think that I'm going to be picking prompts or something like that, or setting like these are the books I'm reading this week. I want to read one book all week if I can, or 10 books in a week if I can, just kind of really being a little loosey-goosey. That's where I'm going this year. So we'll see. And until the next video when I talk about the 52 book club, there we go.